In any relationship, we will die. To me, relationship is a death to what's not real, a death to parts of ourselves that we thought were ourselves that's really not, and a birth of more authenticity. So I think we have to be aware. Am I compromising my essence to be with this person? That's when it gets dangerous.
This is The Deep Dive with Adam Roa. So what is up, deep divers? Hello, hello. My name is Adam Roa. I'm your host. And today I have with me Kute Blackson. Kute is someone that I met actually in Tulum, but we know a lot of the same people. And he is an incredible coach and speaker. He has written a book, You Are the One, which I've actually been reading, which is inspiring to me because the book itself is told through the lens of almost like you're going on the narrative journey. It's not just being lectured at, it's getting taken into this world, this crazy world of taking clients to India and taking their passports and having them get tattoos and just such crazy stuff. You can tell that I read it, bro, because it's so good. And we met in Tulum and had some powerful conversations just about what's going on in our lives and specifically around relationships. And for all my podcast listeners, they know that as the theme of my music, as I've been releasing it, has been a lot around relationships. Bringing guests on to talk about that topic has brought a lot of value. So, Kute, thank you so much for coming on the deep dive today.
Great to just rap with you, bro. It was really a blessing and a pleasure to meet you in Tulum and hang with you. Just felt like reconnecting with a long lost brother.
Yeah, I felt the exactly same way. And I went, I got to get you on this podcast. Let's just find ways to find excuses to have more deep conversations.
That'd be amazing, bro. Amazing.
And so I like to start off with a deep dive question that requires a bit of thought. They're not those rapid fire one word answers. But let's go right in with what do you think is the primary purpose of a relationship? A romantic partnership? What do you think is the primary purpose of humans having them?
For me, I feel that the primary purpose of relationship is our spiritual evolution, the evolution of our consciousness, the evolution of our souls, the opportunity for us through this vehicle and through this lens to see parts of ourselves, to observe parts of ourselves, to face parts of ourselves in the mirror and the reflection of another human being. And through that process, heal, integrate, learn to love those aspects of ourselves and bring them into wholeness, And so for me, the purpose of relationship is evolution. I feel that, in relationship, we come together with someone in a particular moment in time because we and that other person or people, we and that other person either are vibrating at a similar level. We and the other person we're a vibrational match. We have certain lessons that our soul is seeking to teach each other. And so we've attracted each other into each other's lives based on maybe some soul agreement, some karmic agreement, to learn those lessons through the function of relationship. And so there's some lessons that we have to learn, certain ways that we can bless each other. So for me, relationship too, I think that you attract to you in the form of another person in a particular moment, depending on where you are, someone who is shall we say, a mirror manifestation of some aspect of yourself in that given moment in time, that you need to heal, that you need to embrace, that you need to face, that you need to make peace with, that person is a mirror in some way. And so on one level, I believe there's not really a relationship out there with someone else. I like to kind of play this sense of there's really a relationship out there that is a projection of really myself in the form of the other person. And so I'm really in relationship, not with someone else, but with myself, with some aspect of myself, that person is been sent, that I've attracted them into my life to show me, to serve me, to reflect to me. And so I think if we understand the real purpose of relationship, which is learning lessons, growth, and evolution, then I think when the shit comes up, which inevitably shit's going to come up, even in the best of relationships, I think when the shit comes up, then it's not like anything's wrong. I think if two people understand the purpose of relationship and have a joint commitment to serving each other's souls to grow and evolve, but then when shit comes up, then there's a possibility to be compassionate and love and hold each other through that process of stuff coming up, and I think it can be tremendous. Together, and necessarily doesn't mean it can't be romantic, and doesn't mean it can't be romantic and have great sex and make babies and all that stuff. But ultimately, we're here to realize more of ourselves, more of our true selves, and learn the lessons.
So that sounds, it takes a larger than human perspective. It feels like you're taking a soul perspective and seeing romantic partnerships as being a necessary curriculum for our soul's evolution. And I guess
I would definitely say necessary for most, I mean, maybe there's some enlightened beings that have totally transcended the kind of karmic need and the personality need to have that mirror or reflection. But I think for most of us, I think they are an incredible vehicle for our evolution, because in relationship, we can see parts of ourselves that we haven't dealt with. We can see parts of ourselves and face parts of ourselves that we thought we had dealt with, but really hadn't really dealt with, or parts of our childhood. And so I think it's evolutionary. I really feel that more than anything.
And so how do you know when something that hasn't been dealt with, right? When you say, that, okay, this is reflecting to me an aspect of myself that I haven't dealt with. Maybe it's my jealousy. Maybe it's not whatever it might be, not feeling sexy, those sorts of things. At what point do you differentiate the things that are meant to be worked through with your partner versus this is a reflection of something that's not actually for my relationship to heal, but it's my own? Because I do think that, I've been in a couple different types of relationships and now at this stage, and I have taken on the belief that there's some things that the relationship is where you dojo it and you work on it together. And then there's other aspects where you go, this is not the thing to work through with your husband or your wife. This is the thing that you go to your tribe of men or your community to work through, and bring back a more grounded perspective to your relationship. How do you differentiate that human part versus that evolutionary part within a relationship itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is, if two people have a joint commitment, then I think you can work through a lot of shit together. If I show up with I have a commitment to serving your soul, the other person, I have a commitment to serving your soul, then I think there is the possibility to work through a lot of stuff together. A lot can be worked through together. So long as that commitment is there. And so long as that commitment is there, I think you have a relationship, even if it's challenging, even if it's difficult, because there is a conscious intentionality and a conscious choice to commit to each other and supporting each other through that. I would say that when stuff comes up for me in relationship with someone, regardless of if I work it through with that person, regardless if I work it through with my woman, romantically speaking, regardless if I work it with her, the fact that it's coming up for me is still my partner can support me through working through shit. They can be loving, they can be there, we can talk about it, they can reflect. But I think still for me, at the end of the day, I'm the one that has the responsibility. If it's coming up for me, if I'm triggered by it, if I'm stirred by it, if I'm not at peace with it, if I'm not integrated with something, if I have the issue with it, at the end of the day, it's still something for me to work through. Whether they support me through it, whether they don't support me through it, I've always come from the place of taking the responsibility of not really making it about the other person, even though they might be stirring it and triggering it. The fact that it's coming up is showing me something that ultimately is still in myself. Now, I think it's amazing when there's the support and there's the space and there's the understanding and there's the communication and there's the loving. However, if it's coming up inside of me, I've always come from the standpoint of I have the responsibility to move through it and explore it independent of the other person. And so taking the focus off of the other person, regardless of what they choose to do, because they might choose to go there, they might choose not to go there. There's times when I've had issues in the past in relationships and my partner wasn't available, they weren't willing, they weren't willing to look at something. They just weren't wanting to go there for whatever the reason. They didn't have the bandwidth, they didn't have the time, they didn't have the patience, they didn't have the capacity. And so I just come from the standpoint of if I have an issue with it, it's my responsibility to work that issue within myself. And if I can go inside myself, get support from my friends, get support from my family, get support from someone, a therapist, and deal with that within myself, then regardless of what the other person chooses to do, then I can go back into relating with them from a place of either having a deep understanding, a shift, integrating something, some kind of healing around it. And then I'm able to relate to them differently, which then shifts the dynamic, hopefully can shift the initial dynamic in the first place.
Got it. And so what I love about this, and I fully agree, is when people are triggered, they often want to point the finger and be like, you triggered me. When in reality, if it's only triggering you because there's something inside of you that is being triggered, right? And so whenever we get the trigger like that, an emotional response to something that happens externally, it's valuable to look at what's going on inside of myself. Why am I getting upset by this? What is it that is triggering me? And then that begs the question, though, while we can take full responsibility for, okay, there's a trigger in me, I'm going to look at that, I'm going to work on it. There's also a point where you realize this relationship is just not for me. This relationship is not a thing. And so for people who are hearing this, and I want to make sure when they're listening to this, it's not like, okay, every single trigger is your responsibility and you just have to put up with it in your relationship.
I think every single trigger is your responsibility from the fact that it's coming up inside of you. That doesn't mean So it's still your responsibility. That doesn't mean you have to stay in a relationship. So it's still your responsibility in terms of no one's responsible for dealing with that trigger inside of you.
Right. And people have this idea in their heads that the right relationship is one that doesn't trigger all their shit. And so they're like, wait, I'm getting upset. And what happens is they'll often, leave the relationship. They'll keep breaking up. They'll keep being single. They'll keep leaving relationships because they don't want to actually look at what those things are that keep getting triggered because it's uncomfortable. And they're searching for the partner that doesn't trigger that stuff instead of resolving what's actually going on, because that's going to continue to show up in other relationships.
Yeah. I think if we don't deal with, that's why I say we're responsible for that trigger within ourselves, regardless of whether we stay or whether we don't, And I think that when we shift that, when we come from a standpoint of, well, I'm upset because you did X, Y, or Z, what we tend to do from a sort of disempowered place is rather than focus on that trigger and taking responsibility for, I'm upset, I'm hurt, I'm feeling, fill in the blank, we tend to focus on, I'm upset because you did X, Y, or Z. And so then we kind of tend to focus our attention and energy on trying to get you to not do X, Y, or Z so that I don't have to be upset. And so for me, just clarifying that responsibility piece is rather than focusing on what the other person is doing or not doing or should be doing or could be doing, actually just shifting that. I think that when someone triggers us is actually a profound gift, and it's a profound blessing. It's not anything bad. I kind of, I'm not saying I always enjoy it, but I kind of get excited from a standpoint because when I'm triggered, it's highlighting and showing me where I'm not fully free, or where there's some room for growth, or where there's some room for deeper compassion, deeper loving, something I get to make peace with in some way, and so I think that many times your best partner will trigger you. It's kind of like how you choose to go about those triggers and kind of feeling into what is the nature of the karmic connection between you and that person. What is their role in your life based on your karma together? Do you and them both have a similar level of commitment to each other's soul's evolution? Do you feel, I think also what happens when we take responsibility and we deal with our trigger, our pain, our insecurity, our fear of abandonment, whatever that hurt trigger is, and we really heal that, we shift. We kind of shift our frequency, we shift our energy. And I think that energetically shifts us in a certain way where if our partner then also doesn't shift, then I think we're much more clearly able to then discern, I don't need to be in this anymore. Mm-hmm. I actually don't need to stay in this anymore. I'll give you an example. Many, many years ago in my early 20s, I was in a relationship for 4 years with the woman. I was like, almost 5 years, I'm going to marry this guy. This is the one, right? And I was just so sure. And I'll never forget, I haven't told the story. I don't even know if I've ever told the story, but with her for 4 years, 4.5 years, deeply in love, sure she was the one. Challenge was incredibly beautiful woman, like gorgeous, but incredibly jealous. When I say jealous, literally, bro, I would breathe around another woman, okay? Just breathe, just look around. And I was basically flirting, cheating, doing something like out of integrity. And I was totally confused, no idea what she was even on about. And what it triggered for me was a lot of judgment, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of collapse inside of myself and my fear of abandonment, because it was really stirring stuff around my mother. It was almost as though I was in relationship with the energy of not that she was my mother, not that she was even exactly like my mother, but it was stirring a dynamic I had with my mother that thought my father was cheating. Whether he was or wasn't, who knows, but that was the reflection I got from my mother. So all of a sudden I'm in relationship. I kind of manifested this relationship where the woman's energy I'm with now is almost like now I'm being accused of certain things that I'm pretty sure I'm not doing, but it stirred up all sorts of feelings that for me were incomplete that I had around my father, in terms of same way I hated my father for thinking he was maybe cheating or what have you, based on the projection of my mother. Now I'm feeling all those unresolved feelings and anger and resentment towards myself. So now I'm in a dynamic in this relationship with this woman that's jealous. And so 4 years of processing, healing, looking at my childhood, looking at my relationship with my mother, forgiving my father, forgiving my mother. I mean, all this stuff, I won't bore you with the details. But finally, something happened in me 4 years late. It took me 4 years. And let me tell you, the relationship was I ended up suppressing myself. When you love someone and you don't want them to be upset, so there's this sort of like, over responsibility for how they feel because I don't want to hurt them and I love. And so I ended up so suppressing my energy, my charisma, my love for people because I was so afraid of upsetting my mother.
Mm.
You know, that was the pain. And so now I'm in this relationship where I've totally disconnected from myself, my power, just who I was. This is in my early 20s, right? And so as I started to heal and reflect and did therapy and shift some of these dynamics and my fear and my wounds, there came a moment where something fundamentally shifted, whereas I started to heal my over responsibility for women and the feminine and my mother, something radically shifted. There's a whole nother story, but literally 4 years, an event happened, boom, something shifted. And it was like I reached a point where the sense of over responsibility for the feminine just dropped away. Like something shifted profoundly in a way I couldn't explain. I've been working on this for years, and then something went. There was like relief, you know. There was and I could finally see clearly. Like, wait a second, this shit is not mine anymore. Does that make sense? And that day, for me, I'll never forget, the same dynamic started between her and I, where she's like, oh, you looked at that, you know, you turned and you breathed around that woman, you looked at that woman. And for the first time in 4 years, you know, I'm like 23 at the time, 24. I had the insight, the clarity, because I wasn't sort of like conditioned in my own sort of wound and conditioning to look at the situation, and nothing in my energy resonated with what she was saying anymore. Mm-hmm. Because I had like dealt with my shit. Nothing resonated. Like she was projecting and like prior to that moment, I couldn't see that a lot of what she was saying, if not most of what she was saying, was projection. I couldn't see because it was mired in my own wounds. And when she said, oh, you're doing this thing, for the first time, I was able to say with compassion, with neutrality, I don't agree. I actually don't agree with you. I mean, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but for me, you got to understand, you know, it was a huge deal when I was able to just say, I don't agree. I don't feel that's correct. I don't feel that's right. I know what I was doing. I know who I am. That begun. And then I realized the shit and the dynamic is really not mine anymore. I attracted this dynamic to heal the sort of unresolved wound of my childhood with my mother and with my father, the son dynamic. And part of me, you could say unconsciously, attracted this person so I could resolve some things that weren't complete. But when I really did that, I realized in that moment, I'm not responsible for her. I'm not responsible for my mother. And I don't have to take on her stuff for her to be okay. And for the first time, I said, no, this is not true. That was the end of the relationship.
I was going to say, you know,
that blew it up.
Well, I was going to say that I was in a relationship for almost 10 years, and I shared this with you when we met in person in Tulum, and even had, you know, our breakup was a podcast on this podcast years ago, and released it.
Some of it.
Yeah. And I mean, so raw, so vulnerable in the moment there. And one of the things that I would often say to people was whenever we were in conflict, outside of the first maybe 4 or 5 months, after there was a certain point where it no longer became there's something wrong with the relationship. It became this commitment to, this is coming up, I'm triggered or you're triggered, whatever, but we're navigating through it together. And like you said, there was a shift in you that ultimately led to the end of the relationship, because you were no longer willing to continue to be in the same dynamic. And I feel like in my 10-year relationship, we both went through such massive shifts in the last 6 months, massive shifts. And those shifts ultimately made it where we just went in different directions, and we had the awareness to realize there's nothing wrong here. We're not fighting. But it has reached a point where the directions we're heading and our values are taking us in other directions. And I'm in that even right now, sharing without going too much into it because it's so fresh for me, but just, this thing where there's a legitimate what you see for your life and what I see for my life. I don't think that they align. And as much as love, I have this thing where it's like love is not enough. Like love is because
love is not enough. I think there's kind of three components. There's the love connection. There's consciousness, and there's compatibility. And kind of those things have to sort of match up. You can have deep love with someone. Well, I should just back up and say sometimes what we think is love is not really love. It's sort of kind of karmic, wounds coming together. But you can have deep love for someone, deep connection, deep like I fucking love you. I found you. That's connection, but that's not necessarily enough. You can, because your consciousness is also have to be evolving at a similar rate. Otherwise, over time, if your consciousness isn't also evolving at a similar rate, I found over time you will only just grow apart in a different way if you're going in different directions, especially if one person is evolving and one person, let's say, isn't evolving or isn't willing to evolve, or two people are just growing at such different paces. So consciousness, I think, is a vibrational component that's important. But the other piece that I think is often underestimated, and I found this, sounds like you experienced this, is compatibility. Without compatibility, there has to be a level of genuine compatibility. And for me, compatibility can be sexual, can be mental, can be spiritual, can be emotional.
Just practical.
But
like
it can be practical.
Where you live, where I live. Like
it can be practical life path. But like our paths are going in different directions. And it's okay. So, one of the women I loved the most, like if we were just on a desert island together with no one else, it would have been an amazing relationship because the connection was off the charts. But we live in this physical domain. We live in a physical world, and there's like career and life path and purpose and the practicalities that also have to align, right? To be able to have the compatibility, to have the relationship work based on compatibility. So I think compatibility is a real important component that we need to acknowledge for sure in any relationship. And not every relationship is meant to like be forever. Like somehow we think this idea of like you succeed, relationship success is if you stay together forever. And I feel based on, kind of what I shared earlier, if the real purpose of relationship is evolution and learning lessons, then for me, the real success of any relationship, regardless of if it's a week, a month, a year, 10 years, is the degree to which we learn the lessons for which we came together and resolve that kind of karma, so to speak, and also the degree to which I, as a human being, become the most authentic version of myself. In my relationship of 4 years with this woman in my 20s, I started off a very inauthentic version of myself on a human level, and through the process grew the courage to become more authentic. And so I think the relationship success is not about how long you stay together. It's really about the degree to which you grow and evolve. And some of your most successful relationships that we have might have been with the person that was the most challenging,
What's up, deep divers? Hope you're enjoying the episode. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know about my new nonprofit, Surrendered Artist. This is a charity organization that I have founded because I want to teach people the power of art as a technology to shift human consciousness. I have spoken about it a lot on this podcast, and now there's an actual organization that is dedicated to spreading this information. It is also aiming to empower artists with tools to shift out of the starving artist archetype and into a surrendered artist archetype. One of those tools is my 4-step creative process called Unlock Your Inner Artist. We have a free gift for you. If you go to surrenderedartist.org/programs, or if you check out the link in the show notes, you will be able to receive a free multi-page PDF describing this process so that you can go and unlock your inner artist today.
Yeah. And I think that one of the biggest, disservices that to people is when they believe that the success of a relationship is entirely based on it lasting. But if you think about that, that means that every relationship that you have until your last one is a failure if you have that lens on it. And I'm navigating so many different, being in a relationship from 24 to 33, most of what I would consider the, discovering who you are, like really the time where you start to really figure out who you are. So much of that was done through the lens of another person and my identity structure created within that thing. And, I'm getting these different experiences that I think it sounds like you may have even had with like the compatibility piece of, wow, maybe it's just not a compatibility on a practical level. And that's in many ways that has its own level of pain because you want it so differently for that reason. But then you might have on another level, like you said, there's so many reasons why relationships don't work out. My question for you around that is how do you know when it's time to let go? Like if people are listening to this and they're in that question of is my relationship the thing that I really get to fight for and put in more energy, and this is just compatibility in some ways also looks different when there's commitment levels at different, you know what I mean? Some people move here for other people, some people are like, there's a lot of things that can change. And so I guess when do you evaluate it as okay, it's no longer the thing, or when it is it's worthy of more of my time and energy and sacrifice in a way to make this
work? I mean, it's nuanced, because I think every situation is so multi-leveled, multi-layered, and unique based on each person. So I don't feel there's like cookie cutter, but just maybe some guidance for my life and reflection is, by the way, what I will say is, not everyone we have, just this kind of leading into your question, not everyone that we have an attraction to or a chemistry with or a connection with is really even meant to be romantic. And I think there has to be, before even going into relationship, a deeper level of discernment before we even go into relationship, to not project onto relationships what we think or want them to be. But I think if we're willing to step back when we feel a connection with someone, rather than just like, oh, this means romance, and just what I've learned to do over time is just kind of step back and go and feel what is the highest structure or way of relating with this person. Because some relationships I've been in, through trial and error over time, I realized, shit, it would have been best if I was just like brother and sister with that woman. That was the configuration. But in my mind, I made it man, woman, relationship, romance. And it's like there was love present. So I think the ability to discern before we even go into relationships, some of these factors through questions, which we can talk about, I think would also save us a lot of unnecessary breakups if we had the discernment going in of compatibility and who we are and what we want and what have you. So in terms of relationship, knowing when it's over, I think if two people have a joint commitment to serving each other's souls, and that commitment is unwavering, then whether it's challenging or not, you have a relationship. If one of those two people is like, I no longer am committed to serving your soul, I'm not willing, I'm not feeling, then doesn't matter if you stay together anyway. You don't really have a relationship. It's over even if you're together.
And it's so, not, and that by commitment, you mean like high priority.
high priority, a dedication. It's like, I commit to serving your soul in this relationship. I commit to serving your soul in this sort of committed relationship format. Yes, it's a priority. It's important. I am committed. I'm dedicated. I'm ready. I'm willing. And so I think that even if a relationship is challenging, if two people have that willingness and intentional commitment, you have a relationship. That's one thing I would say. Now, in terms of knowing when it's over, one thing I would say is look at, in a relationship, if you have an issue and one person is, they're just an important enough issue and one person is no longer willing, like I broke up with someone and she just was not willing to work on certain things. Just, I'm not willing. And so what do you do with I'm not willing? In that moment, basically the relationship is over. I can try and stay, I can force it. It doesn't work. So without that joint commitment, it's over. That's one thing. The other thing is really looking at, in a relationship, am I growing and evolving? I think that's something to really explore. Is this relationship, are we growing and evolving each other as souls? I think a lot of people stay in something because it's familiar, because it's comfortable. That's why I think it's so courageous of you, when you told me your story, like 10 years with someone you love, and it's not like you or her did anything wrong, right? It's just something wasn't feeling, and so there was something else you were feeling. And I think a lot of people stay in relationships because it feels comfortable, it's familiar, the connection, the sense of home. But I think we have to look at, is my soul growing? If relationship is about soul evolution, am I growing? Am I still growing with this person? Am I challenging and inviting my partner to grow? Is me being with them, are they causing me to grow and evolve as a soul? Or am I just stagnant? And I think many times we stop growing in relationship. And when we stop growing in relationship, it could be for a couple of reasons. Either we get complacent, or perhaps we've just learned the lessons for why our souls have come together and it's kind of complete. Like when a classroom is complete, you can only stay in grade 10 forever. There comes a moment where you have got to graduate to high school, and high school to university, and university to the master's program. And so, you're not like 30 some years old still in high school. There comes a moment of graduation. And so I think when you stop growing is when you have to really look at, I'm not growing in this relationship anymore. I've stopped growing in this relationship. My partner's not growing. I'm not growing. It's been a while. That's something to look at. And maybe there's an opportunity to have a deeper conversation with your partner to explore where the new growth edges might be, where the growth possibilities might be, and see if you're both willing to recreate your relationship together so that you can keep growing in deeper ways. But I think sometimes there can come a point where the reason for why you've come together with someone is complete. Mm-hmm. And I think that is also a valid moment to realize it can be deeply challenging, but to realize this person is not growing where I'm growing, or growing at the level I'm growing, or committed to the level of growth that I'm committed to. And that can be a sign that the relationship might also be, it might be time to sort of like grow in a different direction. I don't think there's anything wrong with that,
Yeah, and I feel something that feels true for me is that it also requires this aspect of when we talk about compatibility, like the commitment itself gets to be compatible. And so what I mean by that is you and I are very career-driven individuals. We work incredibly hard to make an impact on this planet. It's incredibly important to us. Yep. What is needed from you to be that person. If you were to meet someone who lives in a spot, for example, and it would require you to now completely stop your travels and do these things and be here, you can be committed to that. You can be committed to that. And then at a certain point, that may no longer be the commitment, right? The both of you have, I guess, the practicalities of the relationship have, they shift and they change, and not just on the logistical side of things like that, but also on the what do you want from life stance. And for myself, what I've been learning is that because my reference point was a 10-year relationship with someone I thought I was going to have babies with and whatever, that had been my lens that I was wearing on all other relationships, right? So if I went on a date, I went, do I feel that depth of connection? And how silly, I mean, it seems common sense. And yet it's been hard for me to look at a relationship and not compare the connection to what I know is possible. And yet the commitment, like love is never going to look the same, but that commitment level of, okay, we're in this together, I think is the biggest necessary piece. And there comes a point in time where I think people stop making that choice to stay on the same path. And the fear of that discomfort of a breakup, for example, that fear of that discomfort has a lot of people stay in it and either stop moving down the path and just stay exactly where they are because they don't want to let each other go, or go on this path and therefore not really have a relationship even anymore, but just still have the word, right? Still be living in a loveless marriage, for example.
Yeah. I think sometimes we're also committing to certain relationships that aren't really, I don't like the word right, but that aren't really aligned for us, Like if you're saying, well, this person wants to stay and live in one location, I feel the need to travel, but like maybe it's also not aligned as a life partner situation. And that's why I think I was saying earlier, I think it's important that we discern and really when someone shows up, really feel into what is the nature of this connection, like without any assumptions, without any projections, without any I want it to just to step back and go, what is the karmic alignment between me and this person? What is it that our soul, sure, you can force something, but what is the highest, the question I like to ask now is, what is the highest configuration of relationship between me and this person? What is the highest? And I've given up kind of trying to know, because there were moments like way back when I was sure this is what it was, and it wasn't, and it's like, whoa, that's a trip. I was so sure it wasn't. And so that was kind of humbling to realize, well, what the hell do I know? And so I think some relationships are meant to just serve a momentary lesson and a momentary piece of the tapestry of our soul's evolution that doesn't make it any less loving, any less important, any less valuable. Even if it's like it lasted a month, it's not necessarily less than something that lasted 3 years or 5 years or what have you. And so I think really feeling into, I think when we can show up and not try to make a relationship into something that is not, and really step back and allow the intelligence of the connection to reveal, what is this? What is this? Then I think we're able to surrender to what is most seeking to happen in the connection with someone, and then fulfill the destiny that we have with that person, whether it's a month, and love fully, honor fully, whether it's a month, whether it's a week, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, whether it's a lifetime, and honor that fully. And I think some connections are not meant to be a lifetime, and committing to those is not even about it's not about committing to those connections that really aren't aligned in that way anyway. It's kind of about feeling what relationship is aligned in such a way that I know deserves, necessitates my commitment at that level. And so that we're committing to what feels truly aligned.
And let me ask you this question then. Because I'm thinking almost like a video game. It's like I'm playing this video game and I go and I meet this character and I up level and I get all these new upgrades, and then I meet this character and I get all these new upgrades. Do you believe that like there is, like, are you on a search for monogamy? Are you on a search for that person that you can spend the rest of your life with? Or do you view it where if you were perpetually single and had a 6 month and then a year and then maybe 3 months and then 3 years and you were just going through that, does that feel satisfying to you from this perspective of the soul's evolution?
I think at this stage, I have a sense of my destiny. Okay. I have a sense, I've been in some profound relationships with amazing women in my life, like deep life, like incredible, most of whom I'm friends with, amazing human beings. Honestly, at this stage, I'm actually just open. Like my prayer and my openness has become, my prayer and intentionality has become, through a lot of, life kicking me in the ass, has become, I'll just say it this way, regardless of what people's spiritual beliefs are, I want what God wants. Really, that's become my prayer more and more. I want what God wants. And so God showed me and revealed to me what is highest. And that's my intention. That doesn't mean I'm not open, I'm not. So I'll say I'm not, and this is very personal since you're asking, but I'm not looking to be polyamorous. I'm not looking to, I'm like, God, I want what you want. Show me what is highest for my life. There's moments.
How do you navigate that? I think that's the key piece, because
there's moments I thought I knew what was and it wasn't. And so now I'm open. And I know that if I, as a man, speaking to another brother, if I feel I'm very clear about who I am, where I'm going in terms of my direction. And at this stage, the kind of connection, relationship, woman that likely would be a vibrational resonant compatibility with who I am and the kind of mission I'm on. And so with that experience, there's a deeper level of discernment now at this stage of my life. Like there's relationships I won't even go into that I might have gone into 15 years ago. Right. I was like, oh, that's nice. I won't even go there now because I just the discernment and the experience is like, I can already sense that it's not aligned or
I feel like you're saying that based on a desire. Do you know what I mean? Because like it could be aligned for a 3 month, 6 month, but you're seeing it from a lens of, it's not aligned for what? For like
I'm not saying I wouldn't go there. That's why for me it's about feeling into what is the connection with someone that shows up. What is the connection? And so maybe that connection is, as you're saying, 6 months. Right? Maybe it's hard to tell the exact timing, meet with someone and say, our connection is 6 months. Is that cool? But maybe let's just say it's a 6 month life cycle of something you need to learn. So that's beautiful. But going into that with a sense of not fooling myself into that it might be something else. I'm not saying I wouldn't be open, but not like trying to make it something that it's not. Allowing it to be fully what it is and loving fully what it is in the context of what I might feel. So I'm not saying I would stop myself going there with someone because I didn't necessarily feel the alignment that it was going to be forever. Yeah. Right. But it's then also just being, I think, really direct and honest with what I feel the connection is and isn't, at least in this moment of my consciousness and awakeness and kind of clarity, to have a communication and then fully honoring the connection for what it is, given the understanding between me and another person.
I'm starting to believe this. Tell me if this resonates for you. Just for myself and my experiences even in this conversation in real time, I'm starting to believe that ultimately what happens is we meet someone and we make the decision that they, like, if it's going to be a long-term thing or even a short-term thing, but like to be in a really committed relationship, they get to be our number one priority. Like, because what it means is I'm willing to carve my life out around this person. I'm willing to, adjust my travel plans for this person. I'm willing to adjust my morning routine or whatever for this person. I'm willing to whatever it is. And at a certain point, and I feel like that person fits into what we might have. So career, job, all those things, we fit them in, but we're still saying you're my priority. I'm committed to making you the priority, and I will figure everything else out around that. And then you either get to a point where you no longer want to do that, or you realize that it's out of alignment because you value something over here more highly or whatever it is. And that's when I think you see that, oh, this is not that thing. And
or it just served its purpose. It's possible. I think some things you just come to a completion with. It's like, we have finished our classroom together. We have finished our mission for our souls in this particular context. Or maybe the structure of the relationship doesn't allow for the fullest expression of love between each other. Then I think there's the opportunity to go, how do we restructure this relationship to allow for more love? But I would say, yes, make the person a priority for sure. I think that devotion is amazing. But what I will say, and not that you're saying this or not saying this, but what I will say is, we cannot compromise our essence for another human, for another person. I think we can compromise many things that aren't that important in order to kind of gel and make them a priority, travel schedules, this, that, certain things. But I don't believe that we should compromise our essence, our true, authentic essence to try and make it work. Yeah, compromise. Okay, instead of traveling 6 times, I'll travel 3 times, and maybe we'll travel together over here. And maybe, I don't need to eat ice cream on these days and, what have you. And I could eat a little less meat. It's not that important. But I think when we start compromising our authenticity, our true expression, our essence, what's really innate to us, that's when I think we will feel it and we start betraying a part of ourselves. And I think it only leads to, first, maybe invisibly affecting the connection in the relationship and the deeper intimacy when we have to compromise the fundamental core of what we are. I think relationships, if they're aligned, should actually invoke and invite more of our true essence to flourish. That's kind of what I feel. More of that essence. And sometimes challenging. And it's not that it's always going to be easy. But I think if we have to betray, even subtly, parts of our authentic selves, not the superficial stuff, because I think in any relationship, we will die. To me, relationship is a death to what's not real, a death to parts of ourselves that we thought were ourselves that's really not, and a birth of more authenticity. So I think we have to be aware. Am I compromising my essence to be with this person? That's when it gets dangerous.
Well said. Well said. And to bring this full circle, it's important for you to do the inner work so that you know what your essence even is.
Boom.
Like you got to discover what that is to know if you're compromising it or not. And so again, it'll come back to how deeply do you know yourself? The irony is that all of the relationships that you've had and continue to have are helping you discover more of your essence. So when they don't work out, you leave it with more of your essence because they didn't work out because at some level it wasn't aligned with that essence. So Kute, thank you, brother, for coming on this podcast, dropping so much wisdom. And
great to connect, man. It's great to connect.
Always good.
I just love your realness and authenticity, and just honestly, you're a joy. And we had that one conversation in Tulum, and it was just like picking up where we left off.
This is my brother right here. What is let people know where they can find you online? What's your handles and different things so they can find more of your wisdom?
Instagram, Kute Blackson. Facebook, Kute Blackson. www.kuteblackson.com. If they want to sign up for a free 3-part video series, www.activating abundance online. Also, I do a 12-day event next year in Bali called boundlessblissbali.com.
There it is. Kute Blackson, thank you so much for being here, brother. I appreciate just our connection, and I know that we're going to continue to just collab and do things and just become friends more and more. I always appreciate talking to you, man. And for all of the deep divers who have gone on this journey, thank you for being a part of this tribe. Be sure to share this out with your friends and family and help, create healthier, more beautiful, loving relationships by getting this information out to people. So thank you for listening. I want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Have a beautiful rest of your day.